Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're talking about topic 3.3, the First Amendment's freedom of speech. In this lesson, you're going to be learning how the court has protected symbolic speech and how social order and individual liberties are balanced through time, place, and manner regulations. So first, let's talk about what symbolic speech is. Symbolic speech is basically any non-verbal forms of speech. So things like armbands, picketing, even sit-ins sometimes. Not all symbolic speech is protected, but the court has protected many forms of symbolic speech. So for example, the court protected wearing a shirt that said F the draft, that was worn to the court. And the court said that that was a protected form of symbolic speech because the phrase did not incite illegal action. Now, any speech that does incite illegal action is not protected by the court. Another thing that has been protected by the court is burning the American flag in a case called Texas versus Johnson. And basically the court said that state laws that said that burning the American flag was illegal were not constitutional. And so the court found that these laws were only in place as a government-imposed political idea, the idea that you should have reverence for the flag. Well, the court said, well, the Constitution doesn't say that you have to have reverence to the flag. In fact, the American flag didn't even exist when the Constitution was written. So symbolic speech has been protected by the court in many forms, but not always. Let's talk about you guys. Let's talk about whether or not you actually have freedom of speech while you are at school. There is a case in particular that relates to freedom of speech at school, and that is Tinker versus Des Moines. And that is one of your required cases that you have to know for the AP exam. In Tinker versus Des Moines, a student named Mary Beth Tinker wanted to protest the Vietnam War. And to do so, she was going to wear a black armband along with several other of her fellow students. The school got wind of the protest and said that wearing a black armband, it was not allowed and that you would be suspended. But the students did it anyway. They said, this is important. We need to protest. And so they wore the black armbands and they went to school the next day and they were suspended, just like the school said they would be. The students took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, students have free speech. They are allowed to protest. But there was a big but in there. The court did say that students have free speech as long as it does not disrupt the classroom environment. So protest all you want. Please be active, be vocal. We want you to have opinions. But you cannot disrupt the classroom environment. So just be careful in your protests. In order to help balance the need for social order while protecting individual liberty, the court has said that there are limitations to what is entailed in protected speech, into free protected speech. So over the course of several cases, the court has kind of outlined 4 restrictions that governments must follow in order to restrict free speech. So basically, these are the rules that the government has to follow if they want to restrict speech. So the first rule is that the restriction has to be content neutral. It cannot suppress the content, only the medium through which the content is being passed. Second, the restriction must serve a significant government interest. So, for example, one protest tried to burn draft cards. The court said that burning draft cards was not protected speech because it interferes with the congressional enumerated power to raise an army. The third rule is that this restriction must be narrowly tailored. So in that same example, the restriction was specific to burning draft cards. And the fourth and final rule is that there has to be alternative ways to express that speech. So Speech can be suppressed if there are other times, places, and manners in which the idea can be expressed. So you can still express your idea in a different way. So like I've said, not all speech is protected. And one form of speech that is not protected is obscenity, or speech that is utterly without redeeming social importance. It's not protected by the First Amendment, and there is no national standard to define what obscenity is. In the case of Miller versus California of 1973, the court said that local judges and juries should define what they consider to be obscenity. So each local area is supposed to define their own version of what obscenity is. And there's a three-pronged test for whether or not something is considered obscene. First, does it offend the average person in that community? So whatever the average person is in that community, if it offends them, then it can be considered obscene. Does it lack artistic, literary, political, or scientific value? If it lacks all of those, then it might be considered obscene. Thirdly, does it depict sexual content as defined by that state? Basically, is it pornography? If it is, then it's considered obscene and it is not protected speech. One last thing that the Supreme Court has ruled is not covered by the First Amendment is speech that represents a clear and present danger. Now, that is not what the movie poster that you're seeing now is about. This comes from another required case, Shank versus the United States, where a socialist wrote a pamphlet encouraging men drafted into World War I to resist the draft. So this is 1919. This is the first court that examined a federal conviction on free speech. And Shank is really important because it says that the government can limit speech that causes a clear and present danger. It says that danger can be to the public and it can be to Congress's ability to carry out its power. So it's a pretty broad thing. Now, there is a test to determine whether something is considered clear and present danger, and that's the direct incitement test. So this is speech that is likely to result in imminent lawless action, and that can be limited. All right. And some of that has been refined through other court cases like Brandenburg versus Ohio. In this lesson, you should have learned how the court has protected symbolic speech and how social order and individual liberties are balanced through time, place, and manner regulations. If there is anything you missed, please go back through and rewatch that portion of the video now. Then answer the summarizing question in your notes so that you can get a stamp the next time we're in class. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Bye.